I'd like to call this meeting to order and begin with asking that we all rise for the pledge, and if you would remain standing for a moment of silence. To the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I'd like to thank the Acadiana High Air Force ROTC for the presentation of the colors. And I would ask Dr. Aguilar, do you have any opening remarks?
Yes, sir. Thank you. It saddens me to report that Ms. Teresa Davis, a longtime educator here in Lafayette Parish and former principal, a leader in her community and champion for students, passed away today. The wake will be at the Progressive Baptist Church Friday at 4:30, and funeral will be Saturday at 11 at the Progressive Baptist Church. I ask that you keep Teresa's family in your thoughts and prayers. During the flood at Westside Elementary School, several library books were damaged, including books on Cajun culture and Louisiana history. Many thanks to the Acadiana Republican Women's Organization for their diligence in finding replacement books and covering the cost of the books. Considering the age of some of these books, this was a huge endeavor. Inside each book, there will be a donation plate to commemorate the donation. Again, thank you to the Acadiana Republican Women for the donation. Congratulations goes out to the Acadian Middle School Choir. They have been selected to sing the national anthem at the Pelican Games on November 4. In addition, Principal Mr. Moore states he will challenge his entire student body to excel in academics and positive behavior and make transportation and admission to the games a positive behavior support reward. He hopes to fill an entire bus with his students. We are awaiting a preliminary advance check in the sum of $500,000 from our property insurance carrier for flood-damaged Westside Elementary School, and I want to stress that's just an advance check of $500,000 to the district. All Lafayette Parish School System buses are now carrying a full $1 million worth of liability insurance policy as required by the board. We are pleased to report that 15 schools will soon begin their recycling efforts in conjunction with our waste management contract. The program will grow an additional 5 schools just as soon as waste management can provide recycling dumpsters for the schools. And that concludes my remarks.
Thank you, Dr. Aguilar. We would now like to recognize Mr. Joe Craig concerning the donation for CFA Disaster Relief Committee to Westside Elementary School.
Thank you, Mr. President, board members, Dr. Aguilar. I'd like to take a moment to recognize Mr. Eric Guidry with the Community Foundation of Acadiana. The CFA Disaster Relief Committee has made a donation to Ms. Lisa Thomas, Westside Elementary, and the Lafayette Parish School System to be used for the purchase of reading books for the classroom reading centers at Westside. As most of you know, Westside Elementary was impacted by the flood more than any other school, and there were as Dr. Aguilar mentioned, significant damages. And this donation by the CFA organization really will make a difference for the kids, and it's much appreciated. So, Mr. Angel, Dr. Aguilar, Ms. Thomas, Mr. Guidry, thank you very much.
Thank you. On behalf of the Community Foundation of Acadiana, we're very pleased to make this grant to Westside Elementary School. We're all pained in some way, shape, or form by the disasters of the floods in August, and this is just a small token of our appreciation and help. We're a reflection of our generous donors and benefactors that support our organization, and we had an anonymous donation that came in specifically to support children and school systems, and so our committee worked diligently and connected with Ms. Thomas, and we felt that it was the right grant to make, and so we're very pleased to make this grant to help the kids at Westside. Thank you.
On behalf of Westside Elementary School, I just want to say thank you to the CFA organization and to actually everyone in the community who has just rallied around us. And at this point, we are making things work, and things will be better. The recovery will take a little time, but we appreciate all your efforts, your kindness, and your generosity. Thank you very much.
Yes, ma'am. Ms. Morris?
Mr. President, I move that we approve the minutes and accept the reports listed under sections 3 and 4 in Globo.
Okay, we have a motion that we accept the minutes of the previous meeting as well as the financial information and reports in Global. Is that a second, Mr. Latchley? Second by Mr. Latchley, Madam Secretary. Any questions or comments on the motion from members of the audience? Members of the board? If not, Madam Secretary, we'll call for the vote.
Seven for, none against.
Motion carries. Next on our agenda is information reports. 5.1 National 4-H video release highlighting LEO Judice Elementary Schools. It could be you, Mr. Craig, again?
Yes, sir. Mr. Angel, at this time, I'd like to recognize Mr. Charles Hebert with Louisiana Cooperative Extension.
Okay. How are y'all doing this evening?
Fine.
Just want to reiterate, the School Garden program has been going on several years now. We're on our 8th year. This is on behalf of the LSU Ag Center and the school enrichment outreach efforts that began in 2009. And we are part of a national campaign where the National 4-H Council came to Lafayette. They chose Louisiana and chose the school district specifically based on the work that had been done the past 8 years. So I just put together a couple of slides so people would realize what's going on, but school gardens are being incorporated into school curriculum along with nutrition education and utilizing the garden as an outdoor educational laboratory. So it kind of went through the goals of the program and the overview, because it is the entire community working together, both teachers, administrators, master gardeners, as well as the youth. And you'll find out tonight that many of them were involved in LEO Judice last year and previous years. Those students will be featured in the video that we're going to show, and it's just about 3 minutes. So we'll show the video that was produced in June and was released about 3 weeks ago, featuring LEO Judice and the students that were involved this past school year.
I got got started in Food Smart Families from being on the State Food and Fitness Board. We were invited to go to a training in Washington, D.C., and they taught us about the Food Smart Families, and they trained us on how we were going to bring that back to our state and do events through Food Smart Families.
In 4-H, one of our mission mandates is healthy living, where we are teaching young people about making changes in their own eating habits. Kids learn differently in each situation, so we're finding that when we combine those three things, current curriculum with nutrition education and the garden, kids are learning more. They're increasing test scores. This is all part of the 4-H Food Smart Families program, working together within a local community to become a healthier society.
Louisiana is 4th in the country for childhood obesity. And so we're in a culture in Lafayette, in South Louisiana, where food is the center of our celebrations, it's the center of our gatherings.
Hey guys, look at this one. That's almost as big as that one. My experience with the garden and the kids was really cool because we're teaching them to be able to grow their own produce. And what's really cool about that is, one, it's cheaper that way, and it's fun, and it's fresh produce right there.
We have an annual cook-off, and it just keeps growing and growing each year. Each school is teamed with a local chef, and they're challenged to create a My Plate menu based off of using 2 items out of their garden. And then we put the winning recipe of the cook-off on the menu system-wide with all 40 of our schools in Lafayette Parish. And it's a huge teaching tool for us to really bring the mindfulness back to the menu and get the kids excited that their recipe is now on the menu for all 30,000 of our students in Lafayette Parish to try.
It feels good to know that I'm doing something to help these kids live better lives, and so it's really been an enjoyable process and journey through 4-H, seeing all these kids get really involved and love what they're doing and come up right behind me and they take my place and they do the same things, and it goes generation from generation.
And at this time, I would like to introduce Ms. Mia Lemaire and the stars that were in the video. The 2 teachers that coordinate our school garden program at LEO Judice are Ms. Cindy Dupree and Paula Guidry. So if y'all could come up as well. And want to thank y'all for the partnership we have with your school. Ms. Lemaire?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you for allowing us to be here. Oh, this wrong. I was at the wrong mic.
Right.
Thanks for allowing us to be here this evening. We do appreciate all of you recognizing our students that took part in this. And at this time, I'd like to personally thank the 2 teachers that work so well with our school garden initiative. They work tirelessly, spending time after school, working the gardens with the students, teaching them all the positive attributes that you can get from growing your own food and producing all of that. So we're very proud of their efforts, and we're proud of our students. So I'd like to call their names for those of them that were able to join us this evening. Amaya Bellard. And if you can just wait up here, we'll be taking a group picture. Emma Boudreau. Austin David. Francisco Ruiz. And those that were not able to join us, but I'd like to recognize them anyway, are Andrew Constantine, Caitlin Kurt, and also Kristen Mays. Thank you, all of you, for recognizing us, and thank you, Mr. Latchley, who is our board member for Leo Judice and who does go above and beyond to help us, and even has been one of our master chefs at our garden cook-off, so we appreciate that.
Have you been invited back to be a master?
In conclusion, again, just want to thank y'all for all of your continued support to our programs. We will be back in November for an annual report, but this is another highlight of a special event that occurred over the summer and wanted you to know what was going on within the school garden program. Thank y'all.
Thank you, Charles.
You're welcome.
4-H is kind of near and dear to my heart. My two of my children showed pigs for many, many years when Charles was still at 4-H and had a wonderful time. Their mother didn't like it too much, but my kids enjoyed it. And you know, you'd be surprised that some people think eggs come from a grocery store. There's a lot of people that don't understand some of the rural and the gardening culture of our parish, but it's 4-H helps us. It helps enlighten us, and we appreciate that. Personnel changes for September. Mr. Craig, Mr. Thibodeau.
Mr. Angel, those are personnel changes are attached to the agenda item. We have no introductions tonight. If there are any questions.
No questions. You want the floor again concerning school staffing?
In your packets, we gave a brief review of a summary of the staffing and appeals from this past late spring and summer. Originally in the fiscal year budget for 2017, 28 appeals teachers were allocated to the superintendent. On July 6th, Human Resources, myself, met with the Moss Prep and Career Center staff. We were able to make a few more cuts, and with those cuts, we were able to increase the allocation of appeals teachers to 32. Since that time, 24 positions of the 32 have been awarded based on actual student enrollment, not just predictions. Of those 24, six of them are related to special education. And what's happened is we're seeing a lot more kids that are coming out of pupil appraisal with exceptional needs, and state mandates require that they need specialized certified teachers in those programs. So we've been expanding special ed based on state mandated evaluations. Additional appeal teachers were granted for the French programs in the state, in the parish, particularly Northside, Karen Crow Middle, and Karen Crow High School. We've also added 2 ag teachers. The ag teachers are critical to meet the Jump Start requirements for the career diploma. We've also added some administrative assistants at West Side. We've given them a full assistant principal, and really that became critical when that school was split into 2 locations. Milton Elementary also has a full assistant principal, and we also provided Burke with an additional assistant principal based on the number of their population in general, and their ESL population in particular is growing. And then finally, we had some programming appeals granted, proctors and teachers to assist with RTI, Fast Forward, and a curriculum coordinator at J.W. James.
Any questions or comments from any members of the board concerning the appeals? Status update, Mr. Centeni.
Mr. Craig, at the bottom of the list of appeals granted, there's, I think it's all of the ones marked enrollment increase per head count. They don't have a dollar figure in that column. Why is that? Am I,
Those should be ditto marks. They should be $65,000. I can't.
oh, so they should all have 65,000?
Yes, sir. All of those are regular classroom teachers. Yes, sir.
And is that 65 for each of those teachers included in the 1.7 million?
That should, yes, that should be subtracted from that.
Okay, all right. Can you explain how, I know 24 of the positions were granted, or appeals were granted because of an enrollment increase. How did we know the enrollment was going to increase on May 17th as opposed to the ones, like I get the ones that were granted on August 22nd? What are the, what is the criteria for a May 17th enrollment increase?
And really, that's probably, I can't tell you why HR put that date on there. We did not grant appeals until mid-June, and really, unless they could show us a warm student count, we did not grant appeals. Now, the exception to that is with kindergarten. They've never been in school before, but if the principals would bring us completed enrollment applications, packets from the parents, we gave credit for that position. But really, it was mid-June before the superintendent came in and sat down and made decision in terms of appeals for enrollment or programs or support.
And how about the J. Wallace James entries? Have we, I'm not saying this is a bad thing, but have we expanded the enrollment at James?
No, sir. What had actually happened was last year there was an attrition from the school. For whatever reason, kids left J.W. James. So when we ran the numbers through the Excel spreadsheet, it showed them as being overstaffed. And we have the capacity to take more kids in. Well, once we realized that, Ms. Schmiersaw said, look, I can fill those seats up. I got a waiting list. We had already made those cuts in the budget process back in the late spring, and so we felt it was important to provide the opportunity for kids to get into the academy, although in this case it affected us for 5 academy spots, but we were able to meet more demand for the academy.
All right. Thank you.
Any other questions from members of the board? Yes, sir, Dr. Chasson.
Mr. Craig, maybe you can answer this question. What in particular would be the deciding factor in one school getting an assistant principal position over another?
Typically, the assistant or the principal comes to us an explanation. Like in the case of Charles Burke, while they don't have the numbers, they've got a large and growing population of ESL. And because of the extra demands and assistance that those kids need, we felt that they could use some extra support. Part of that is tied to Westside Elementary. Ms. Thomas and her faculty did an outstanding job raising scores there last year. I think they might have been the second highest in the district. And she only had a half of an assistant principal.
Okay.
And the lady, everything she was doing, her back was against the wall, and she came to us and said that, and we gave her the support.
Okay.
So really, primarily, we look at the student population, we look at their enrollment, do the kids need extra assistance? Every so often, we try to avoid half positions, but you do get a half position sometimes. So we look down the list. You're right, everybody would love another assistant principal.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Craig.
Any questions or comments from members of the public? Next on our agenda is a status update and public comments concerning Southside High School. Mr. Guidry?
It's part of the application for USDA funding part of that process requires that we acquaint the public with the project and allow time for public comments and questions. So in our efforts to satisfy that requirement, we've asked Mr. Crozier to provide us with an update as to the status of the Southside High School project, and following his presentation, we would ask that the floor be open for public comments and questions.
Dr. Aguilar. Can everybody see PowerPoint that's on the screen? No? Got it? All right. I just want to give you some real quick statistics, kind of a rehash of what we looked at before. We're 3 stories, square footage. Currently right now, the usable, which is the inside of the exterior walls. And there's other square footage that's not in here as well. So right at 240,000 square feet. We're approximately 825 feet from one corner to the other. We've got 40 bus parking spaces, approximately 28 visitor, 268 teacher spaces, 469 student spaces, and 33 utility vehicle spaces. That kind of gives you some general statistics from the site. Level 1 for the level 1 is what we call the library level. It's the main level. So you've got on level 1, you've got the cafeteria is on level 1, the dining room, career and tech, PE areas, the gyms, maker spaces, band hall, our black box theater, choral. Second level, mostly general classrooms and science labs. There's a small cafe on the second level, career planning center, food labs. Level 3 is very, very similar. Classrooms, teacher's lounge, computer lab, science labs, those kinds of things. This just gives you a real general idea of the first level, 163,000, almost 164,000 square feet. This is broken down by department. So administratively, about almost 3,500. Career and technology, almost 14,000 square feet. Fine arts is 15,700. Food service, 14,500. 23 general education areas equaling 15,400. Central plant, there's a 3,000 square foot central plant. So it's a big first floor. Circulation, about 26,000 square feet, 26,600. Second floor, again, mostly teaching spaces, 23,000 square feet with 1,300 feet of circulation. And I think we'll find, actually, what is this? This is the library level, is the intermediate level. Second floor is 51,000 square feet. That sounds better. Admin, career and technology, there's some spaces up there. It's a small food service. As you can see, quite a bit of educational spaces on that second floor. Circulation seems high here at 17,000, but a part of that is our collaborative areas. So there's a couple thousand square feet of areas outside the classroom that, I guess, depends how you look at it. Some people looked at it as circulation. We looked at it as a little differently, but I know that that's in this calculation. Third floor is very similar, 51 second, 43 on the third floor. The difference there is the atrium spaces that go all the way up. So again, we've got general education of 18,000 square feet with the other support areas on the third floor. General site plan. We've got buses coming in on the left-hand side of the screen. At the bottom of the screen is where all of the students would enter in the general public. The gray areas that look like concrete, guess what? Concrete. So that's where we're going to park, that's where we're going to circulate, and that's how we're going to control keeping buses away from kids with new driving permits. So, and the building creates that buffer as well there in the center. This just kind of gives you an idea of how we refer to the yellow is area A, which is the fine arts area. Area B is shops and cafeteria. Area C is admin, library, classrooms. The blue, light blue, is area D, which is again more classrooms. Area E is the gym. There's a competition gym and a practice gym there. And area F is the locker rooms. Give you an idea, the yellow, area A, area B, area C, area D have all that concrete has been placed. So we've technically been under construction for almost 4 months, and we finished the design last week. So we're moving along pretty good clip. Exterior rendering. This is our current exterior rendering for the project. We added some text on the the yellow band up at the top, where we can brand the school from the exterior there. There are some subtle changes that we made in some of the colors, but essentially yellow is the one that we decided in consultation with Dr. Aguilar and other members of the school to stick with. This is an interior shot of one of the collaborative areas on, this is the second floor. So this is the area I was talking to you about. We're outside the classrooms. The classrooms actually have glass in them. You can see them on the perimeter. And then up above you is the atrium that pops up to the next level as the students walk around the next level. This is another interior shot on the second floor looking down into the library. So there's a stair right directly in front of you going down, and then you've kind of got this stadium seating, if you will, off to the left there. Places for kids to gather and cooperate together and come up with different ideas. It's a pretty interesting space. There, the space, it looks like it's floating on the opposite side with the glass in, is the teacher administrative areas and teacher's lounge there. There's some conference rooms behind those wood slats, and some other administrative areas on the second and third floor. Oh, wrong way. Oh, maybe I was the right way. This week's activities on site. Storm utilities, storm drainage is still being put in. We are on schedule. We did certainly, we are being affected, and we're affected by the floods in August. I don't know exactly the magnitude yet, but they're not applying for a lot of days. I think we're going to be able to overcome those. We're putting together a plan with the contractor now to do that. And there are some other, we've had some subcontractor partners in Baton Rouge and Denham Springs that were really affected. One of them lost his entire shop, and 60 of his 65 employees were flooded at home. So, it's pretty difficult to overcome that. So we're working with those people and trying to see if we can't still utilize them as a sub. On this job, maybe we can help him save his business. But it'll just have to see what happens in the end. But we are trying to figure out what the order of magnitude is on that. Pour number 3 for the tilt walls is happening. Pours 1 and 2 happened already. I'm probably not going to tell Dr. Ray when we're going to stand up panels, because I know he wants to be out there.
I actually heard the date today.
Oh, okay. All right. But I'll let you know when I'll have to figure out who the mole is in my office. It's a pretty dangerous, it's the most dangerous part of what we're going to do. So they're in excess of 50 feet. They've been known to come apart whenever you stand them up. So we really don't want to be too close to them. So, but and they'll be braced temporarily for a certain period of time until they brace them permanently. So it's a pretty risky endeavor. But anyway, the tilt wall panels are going well. You'll start seeing those when they start standing those up. It'll start coming off the ground, and they're going to hang them fast. So it's going really well. Next set of 24 quantity had been formed, so we got the next set. We've probably got 40 formed now. The next set's 24. They're putting all of the blockouts for the windows and the hose bibs, and they got to put all those things in now. So those are all getting done. And then in the kitchen, I think the kitchen's getting poured on Tuesday, so they're prepping for that next week. I did have the latest video here. Well, I thought I did. Let me grab it here. All right. Let's see. This is let's go with this one. This one's a little bit longer, but I think it shows it a little bit better. So before I hit start, the gyms are off to the right. You can't hardly see them in this picture now. There's no concrete placed in the gyms yet. You can kind of see these rectangular things laying on our slab. Those are parts of the tilt wall. They use the slab as a form, or casting bed, they called it. Over on the left-hand side is, you see this little donut where the dirt has been left out? That's the library. The library is elevated, so that'll be one of our pours that'll happen later on. So next to the library is the dining room. The dining room is to the left of that dirt hole, and the kitchen is right behind the library going to the back. So anyway, we're, again, at least 800 feet across the front, which is 3 football fields. So we'll start this real quick. I don't believe you can see my cursor, but you're kind of looking toward the front entry. Again, where that white truck is casting beds for our tilt wall panels. Kind of get an idea of scale. You can see the people walking around on the slab. I think our teachers will be in shape by the time they go from the opposite side. The far end now is your career in tech and fine arts. You're flying over the competition gym and the practice gym and PE areas. Some of this concrete where these tilt wall panels are now, we're actually going to remove that. You know, you're trying to pour these 50-foot tall tilt wall panels, and you're trying to find where we didn't put plumbing. It's not easy to find an open spot. On the back here where this blue pipe is laid out is about where your rear ring road is in the back. So we're coming around these little mounds back here, the white mounds and black mounds. That's where your science labs are going to be on the first floor. And again, more tilt wall panels. Kind of looking straight ahead now, that is about that's where the kitchen is. And then we're coming around the corner where your career in tech is going to be at. So this side of the building is mostly first floor. You know, just a single story structure. So again, we're coming around. So you'll see, you know, different pieces of plumbing pipe sticking up. But again, you see these people walking across the slab. Again, it gives you an idea of some scale as to what we're looking at. And then off to the right, you can see all of the job trailers. There's 2 or 3 of them out there now where we meet. And I think there's a conference room table in there that can fit at least 20. And we'll fill it up tomorrow morning. So there's a lot happening. So this is just pretty much a redundant flyover at this point. So there we go. That's our quick little update. Does anybody have any questions?
Yeah, I have a couple of questions.
Sure.
What was the status of the water after that flood in Youngsville relative to the slab that was obviously already, or most of the slab that was poured?
We have a camera on site that takes a picture every hour, day and night, and it didn't get anywhere near the slab. You couldn't even see it on the camera view. There's a retention pond. The drone doesn't, well, you can maybe kind of see it here where I stopped. Off to the back left, I'm sorry, back right corner, you might see some dirt being worked back there. Our retention pond was overtaken by the coulee, so it filled up. It's about 25 feet deep right now. It's probably, 18 feet deeper than it's gonna be when we're done. So it's much deeper, and it's almost as big. So it's a huge hole back there right now, and the water overtook that. It completely filled it up, and then it started working its way toward the slab. Lemoyne estimated that it would have needed to come up feet to come anywhere near our slab. So I feel pretty good about the event that we had, however bad it was very, very bad. We were a long ways away from having to worry about it.
Mr. President, I do want to say that Saturday, during the rain, during the high water, when it was several feet high in that area, I was out there, and I'll tell you that the water was many, many feet away from getting up to the slab, which is a little higher elevation than where the water was. So it would have had to come up a whole lot.
Yeah, you think about how big that area is out there, you know, the water that those neighbors took, you know, if they had 15, 16 inches, I mean, they would have had to have 4, 5, 6 feet in order to come anywhere near a slab. That's kind of what we're thinking. But we did okay with it.
I have another question. You mentioned a practice gym and a competition gym.
Yes, sir.
How many gyms are there at this site?
Just 2.
Those 2?
Yes, sir. There was a plan for a 3rd gym, and during design development, you know, we had to make some cuts to the program, and that was one of the cuts that was made. So what we did was we flipped the competition gym around so that if we needed to add that 3rd gym at some point, we could.
Any other questions? That concludes my question. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Yes, I'm sorry. Yes, sir. You can come up to the mic and give us your name and ask your question.
How y'all doing this evening?
Fine.
My name is Paris Gotch, and I'm from Northside High School. I'm a senior this year. I'm part of the civic team, and I would like to ask a question. Yeah, how long will it take for the school to be fully developed for like kids to start attending the school?
I think we're ready for the 17-18 school year, Dr. Aguilar.
It's set to open in August 2017 for 9th and 10th graders.
Next upcoming year?
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Since the flood that just occurred, how did y'all manage to clear up the water so quickly around the school area?
There wasn't any water pooling around the construction area. That's what they just mentioned, that the elevation is high enough that there wasn't any standing water in the construction site.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other public comments? This is what this is all about. Thank you, sir.
Sir.
All right. Next, I'll read the introduction items we have. 6.1, request for approval of grant submission. GBM personnel transfer policy. Half-cent sales tax fund declaration of excess reserve. Payout to teachers for the year 15-16. Approval of a new job description, food service office coordinator. Any request to move any of these items to action? If not, I'll move on to grouped time-sensitive action items. I'll read them out and ask that any of you who want any of them pulled, let me know. 7.1, general fund budget revision, request to address damage repairs caused by August flooding. 7.2, Como High School performing arts project, add to bond project listing.
I'd like to pull that one, please.
Thank you, Eric. We're going to pull 7.2. 7.3, investment advisor for 403B program. I'd like to pull that one, please. 7.4, cooperative endeavor agreement with the city of Youngsville for construction of a road. 7.5, self-funded construction fund budget revision, Acadiana High Agri-Science renovations project. 7.6, self-funded construction fund budget revision for Como High School restroom renovations.
Can you pull it out?
7.6. 7.7, self-funded construction fund, budget revision to add Northside High School Gymnasium's air conditioning project.
You pulled out.
7.7. 7.8, request to advertise RFP number 11-17, Como High Performing Arts Instructional Suites and Black Box Theater. I'd
Pull
like
that,
to pull that one. 7.8. 7.9, selection of record keeper for 403B program. I'd like to pull that one as well.
Mr. President, I move that we approve action items 7.1, 7.4, and 7.5.
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Knizik. Any questions or comments from members of the audience? From members of the board? If not, Madam Secretary will call for the vote.
Eight for, none against.
All right, 7.2 is Como High School Performing Arts Project. Add to the bond project.
Mr. President, I move that we defer this item until, assuming item 7.8 passes and we get the work product back from the architects and actually know what the construction is going to cost. I move that we defer this item until we have that answer and know the actual construction costs.
We have a motion on the floor. Do we have a second? Mr. Leclerc seconds the motion. The motion is to defer the high school performing arts project, or to defer adding it to the bond project
Correct.
list.
To defer adding it to the project list.
Okay, any questions or comments from any members of the public concerning this motion? From members of the board, Eric, Mr. Knizik, you want to?
Well, I think we've seen, and we're going to see it tonight, where we have allocated a budgetary number that is unrealistic. Later on, we'll see one that we allocated 1/3 of what the actual cost of, for instance, the Como High School bathroom renovations are. So I think we might be better served if we get into a habit of developing more accurate estimates and or getting the actual construction costs from the designers before we establish line items, because what I see happening, for instance, this $126 million we put it in writing as a project list and we put a budget by it, and it becomes an expectation. It becomes, hey, we're getting a new, and we can pick them, we're getting a new Southside, Catherine Drexel. Well, the realities are everything we're doing is costing more, everything. And at some point, something's going to come off of that list. And instead of getting into that case, I think that we should only allocate money or budget money once we actually know a more realistic cost. If at some point we can develop more realistic costs without going out for an RFP, then maybe we can go back to this type of process.
Any other questions? Dr. Aguilar.
Members of the board, let me just caution you that later in the agenda, we're asking you permission to issue the RFP for the architect to begin work. Might be prudent at this point just to authorize the project without a fixed amount of money so that the architect can begin work. Otherwise, we have no budget.
Mr. Santini, I think you had your hand up.
All right, so I think we're meeting somewhere in the middle here, because at the Finance Committee we discussed this very topic of how do we, there was a lot of discussion about reuse of existing classroom space. Are there certain classrooms that are next to each other where a wall can be knocked out? And reuse that as a strings room or a dance room or whatever it is, right? And Dr. Chasson brought up a very good point. He says, so how do we make sure that we're reusing all the space that can be reused rather than building something? And I said, well, you make the budget lower than they've estimated, and they have to come back and request more, and then we can require justification. I think this is a good thing Mr. Knezik is proposing, like a good method of accomplishing the same thing. At the same time, Dr. Aguilar, what does it mean? Like you said, we don't have a budget. What does it mean to authorize the project? I mean, it sounds like you still wouldn't have a budget if we authorize the project.
It also sounds like we're really not giving the architect any direction.
Okay. No, I agree. Like I think,
so I'm comfortable with the finance committee saying let's budget the project at $6 million, knowing that it's probably it was $1 million under the estimate, but it wasn't the architect really fine-tuning the estimate. It was a general cost analysis for the scope of the project, and the finance committee decided to pull $1 million off of that estimate. So I feel like the $6 million was a good number, knowing that there probably might be some additional cost, but we can give the architect a ballpark to work with as they begin development of the project. Otherwise, we're not telling them how many square feet, how many instructional areas, how many floors, capacity of the black box, those kinds of things.
Yes, sir, Ms. Kennedy.
Can't we do that in the RFP in 7.8? Can't we just say, whether we define it by square feet, we give them a budgetary number?
Yes, sir, we could.
Mr. Centini?
so are we able to, I think, because I want to accomplish both of what you're saying. Are we able to say something like we want to build this, like we intend to build this, we are trying to get a better handle on how we go about our construction projects? I mean, does that? I guess I'm still at a miss of why a dollar amount is required for the architect. Like let me look at it this way, right? If we say we want to build a $6 million auditorium, we're going to get a $6 million auditorium, whether that is any more or less than our needs. So are we not able to say we want to build a 400-seat auditorium, or we want to build strings classrooms and dance rooms, and how much does that cost? Because I think that's what Mr. Knezik is asking us to do, is say, here's what we want, how much does it cost, as opposed to saying, here's what we have.
Spend it all.
Right. I mean,
or more.
You walk on the lot and tell the car salesman that you can pay $300 a month for a car. You're going to pay $300 a month for a car, whether it's for 36, 48, 60, or 72 months.
Right.
So, I mean, I get what you're saying, but also, Dr. Aguilar, I want to make sure that we give enough direction to accomplish what you need to move forward with the project.
Right, and I don't want to be, I want to make sure I'm clear. Fully support 7.8, going to vote for 7.8. We need to build more facilities there. I just don't want to get in the habit or get out of the habit of setting an artificial number that is just, it's not accurate. And then we plan around it. You know, our $126 million, I think we have a $2 million contingency right now, and so that concerns me. So if we can defer on this item and then add language to 7.8 in the RFP to say whether it's square footage or a budgetary number not to exceed $6 million or $7 million, whatever, I would be fine with that as well.
And just to be clear, I'm comfortable with articulating a scope of the anticipated scope of the project in the RFP.
Mr. Broussard?
I think there was some of the language in the Finance Committee meeting with Dr. Chasson brought up utilizing the space that's already there. And some of the language that was used is not to exceed $6 million. So the project was supposed to be $6 million or less. And I agree with Mr. Knezik that lots of project comes in with the change order would almost double what it's sent out before. I would appreciate us getting a closer number of the projects that's out there than what we're getting now. But I think the language we used that night was not to exceed the $6 million budget that we wish to allocate for it.
Yes, sir, Mr. Dago.
If the motion were to pass the way it was recommended from the insurance committee with, the finance committee with funding allocation of 6 million, we kind of know it's going to be more than 6 million, but I understand the motivation of the finance committee. Let's assume that it came in at 7.2 million. Would that definitively mean that before this project even started, you all would have to come back to get approval for that additional funding? Not like a change order request, but to even start the project.
Actually, you're correct. In fact, the architect's going to begin work immediately once he or she is selected, the firm is selected. And they're going to be billing us for work completed as the program scope is being developed. Okay, we could possibly pay those bills, and we have the resources to do so, but we have no budget approved by the board for this project. And I know we're getting hung up on, do we declare a fixed amount of money for this project, or do we wait and see what the cost will be? And I want to just caution the board that you're seeing requests for budget adjustments only for the projects that exceed the budget. You're not seeing the large majority of projects that are done at or under budget. So I think you're misrepresenting the situation that all of these projects are coming in over budget. You're only seeing the ones that need additional funds.
Yeah, no, but by the way, I'm a little closer aligned with you, Dr. Aguilar, just for the record. I'm trying to find out how to accomplish both goals as well, like Mr. Santani said. So if there's no budget at all for the architect, then the next question is, the architect is paid a percentage of the total cost of the project, is that correct?
Yes,
So if the architect starts working before he or she has an idea what the cost of the project is, how are they billing us?
It's going to be difficult. It really is going to be difficult for the district to sign a contract with the architect other than a percent for work complete, a percent for the project cost.
Could we allocate a certain dollar amount in the next item in addition to all the other information that's been discussed, Mr. Knezik? Was that your intent?
Well, we could. I mean, we know that, our architects are here. Is their fee 7%? Is that about right?
Well, if we put a dollar amount, if we can get an architect to give us an idea of a dollar amount so that we could maybe put that in the motion as well, so that they have a budget.
$420,000 is 7% of 6 million.
There you go.
Right.
Ms. Morris?
I agree with what Mr. Knezik is saying, that we may need to re-examine our procedure, but I don't think that this project is the one we need to do it on, because this project needs to be completed for August 2017. So we have less than 12 months. So I'm not sure that this is the right project to start re-examining our procedure, because we are really short on time. We still have to select an architect, they still have to give us designs, and we need to get the project completed by August, mid-August.
Ms. Centini?
So if we, Dr. Aguilar, if we allocated, let's say $500,000 to the project, certainly that would be enough to cover any billing that the selected architect. It wouldn't hold you up with your architect selection and design work phase, correct?
You're correct.
If you're comfortable with
So
articulating.
that would give us an operating budget, and then in the scope of the project for the RFP for the architect, we could set an anticipated dollar amount. That would work.
Right. And just to clarify, I know we need this, I want this. My point is that if it's $9 million, then I want us to allocate $9 million for it. But we won't really know that answer until the architects have done their job and done the programming and seen what existing facilities can be renovated and what we actually need.
So I'll make a substitute motion.
Okay.
That we allocate $500,000 of future bond proceeds to the Como High School Performing Arts Project, which includes the instructional suites and Black Box Theater.
I will second that.
Any questions or comments from members of the public? From other members of the board? I just want the board to know that I'm going to vote against the substitute motion, and you'll understand why a little bit later on in the meeting. But I think we have needs, we have other needs in this parish that are as great or greater than a practice room or whatever. If there's no other comments, Madam Secretary, we'll call for the vote.
Seven for, one against.
Motion carries. Item 7.3, I'm going to hand the gavel over to Ms. Morris and ask her to run this one because I requested that this item be pulled. And
Where are we? 7 point.
And for purposes of discussion, I'll make a motion that we approve the investment advisor of a 403B program.
All right, we have a motion on the floor. Do we have any comments from the members of the public? All right, from the board?
Yes, I do. Madam President, I would just like to ask, and I'm going to pick on Jeremy because he's the expert, and I don't mean that sarcastically, Jeremy. But compared to me, you are an expert in investments. Tell me what the ramification is. I mean, I'm hearing that teachers won't be able to invest where they want to anymore. Somebody's going to tell them where they can go. It has to be. I mean, help me out with that.
Well, Mr. Angel, that's a long story, and I'll make it as short as I can. I know I have 10 minutes. And I'm also going to ask that our advisors who this board hired to facilitate this process also speak to this topic. But in a nutshell, I want to say that, number one, no one is going to be forced away from using their advisor, their current advisor. So if you have a plan right now in place, you have a 403. By the way, we have about 4,200 potential participants, and only 700 participate. And we can get into that deeper later. That's problematic. If you have a current plan in place, number one, no one is going to make you or even try to convince you to move it over. You can move it over. You do not have to move it over. Number two, we have 9 vendors, 9 different companies, so many different advisors that come out and, like sharks, where they're allowed to solicit these plans in our school system. Some folks, some of the 700, know who their advisor is. Most of them, if you ask them, I will assure you that they don't know who their advisor is. So of the ones who do know their advisor, they are certainly welcome to continue to use their advisor in any capacity they choose, except to continue contributing to the plan from payroll deduction. Okay? So they can take all the information they receive, bring it to their advisor, and get all the same advice that they're currently getting. Right now, we have 9 vendors, at least 7, maybe 8 are annuity products. So to say that we're moving away from options to no options is exactly the opposite. The new advisor, if this is implemented, is going to have over 10,000 mutual fund options that they're going to be able to compile down into a manageable list for participants to sign up for. Again, that list may be 2 or 3 sheets long. The participant, if they choose, can use the advisors, they can use the online resources, or they can go to their current advisor and say, these are my options, what do you suggest I do? They can continue to work with their current advisor. They will not, however, be able to continue to contribute to the plan via payroll deduction, and that is a positive thing for the school system. Remember, we have 9 different vendors right now that that's how many slots we have, and we're going to go to one. I don't want to speak to the legalities. I would prefer that we ask the advisor that we paid, that this board hired and paid to go through this process to get into those details, but that's a nutshell on the question you asked.
So if I'm a teacher or if I'm an employee and I'm investing, the school board is taking money from my check and they're putting it in gold. I'm just going to use something. And if the advisor says, no, that's not a good idea, then I can still put my money in gold, but the school board won't deduct my check and put it for me. I'll have to go do it myself.
You will be, and again, I'm going to let the expertise answer that in legal terms and fiduciary terms, but you can invest in, you don't have to have a payroll deduction to invest in gold. They can go to their advisor and write a check any day of the week. Now, through this specific 403B plan, payroll deduction, they will no longer be able to contribute via payroll deduction to that plan that they have today. It will all be one. Right now, it's 9 individual plans. Well, it's 700 individual plans with 9 vendors. It will go to a group plan, since we're becoming more and more responsible for actions within that plan. We don't have we can't manage that plan because it's not a group plan. It's not our plan, but we're responsible. We're trying to limit that risk and get away from that responsibility. Well, pass the responsibility on to someone who has the proper insurance for that, which will be the advisor. And so the answer is they can invest in gold in the new plan, or they can go see their current advisor and write them a check if they want to buy gold.
Yes, sir, Mr. Sindini.
There's nothing saying that their current advisor won't be the one advisor, right?
Well, that's the other interesting part. Out of the 9 advisors, only one of those companies responded to the RFP. And I'll tell you this, 2 of those companies I heard make comments related to their existing products in the school system. One of them said, yeah, we should have looked at this a long time ago. We should have done better than what we're doing. The other advisor the other company who did respond to the RFP was asked in the meeting, in the RFP selection presentation meeting, why now? What are you going to do better for us now than you've been doing over the past 15 years? And they really had no answer. So, yes, their existing advisor is not going to be part of the process, but that's not our fault. They could have responded to the RFP, and they chose not to.
Mr. Broussard?
Jeremy, we're here now because we were dissatisfied with the present advisor that we have. Why are we here now?
Right, we're here now because for 7 years, I hate to put Matt on the spot, but for 7 years, Matt Dugas, his team, and others in the school system have tried to transition away from this chaos, as they call it, or have called it, to a single vendor platform, because over the years, the government has mandated. Back in the day, 10, 15, 20 years ago, there was no oversight from the school system on these plans. You can come in, as long as the school system allowed you a payroll slot, you can come in, sell your product, and everybody's happy. As 403B plans became more popular and have really become bigger in the market, the government has put more oversight over the companies who are we're not administering the plan, but we're considered to be administering the plan because it's through our payroll deduction. And so we're on the hook in a fiduciary capacity, but we have no oversight over these plans because it's not our plan, it's individual plans. This here would be a single plan that the school system, the school board, would provide to all eligible employees, that the advisor who's chosen would be fiduciarily responsible for. And that responsibility and risk would be off of our back, and we would not have 9 vendors in every one of our schools. We would have one vendor and educating the folks. Look, it's unfortunate, but the nature of the business is you have 9 vendors that everybody's trying to hurry up and make a sale. That's the unfortunate reality, as opposed to educating the employee and allowing them to make a decision based on education and not just who's here today to sell something. I mean, we all hear the story. I hear the stories. My wife's a teacher. They stay away from the teacher's lounge when they know sales folks are in there, as opposed to being educated on something that's very important, and retirement is very important, and that's why I took an interest in it through the insurance committee.
Yeah, Jeremy's right. Historically, when this plan was started, it was strictly voluntary, and the only reason the school system was involved because we provided a tax-deferred deduction from your check. And so basically any vendor that walked off the street selling anything could get a deduction. And at one time we had 15 or 16 vendors, and it got kind of crazy, so we made some caveats of who could be a vendor, and I think we got it down to like maybe 17 or 15, and then currently it's down to 7. But there's a lot of problems with those plans, so the IRS started ratcheting up the responsibility, and all of a sudden the school board went from 0 responsibility to 100% responsibility within probably 10 years. So basically, if we were to go today and say we want to start a 403B plan, which in industry would be consistent with a 401k plan, we would never just go on the street and said, yeah, well, whoever wants to come in, just come and sell some stuff. We'd go through a transparent process. We would bid it out and use the weight and the size of the school system to drill down and get those prices down as low as possible. So we ended up with what I call a backdoor plan. We were totally responsible, but we had no idea what the people were selling or how much they were charging. So we did have one our TPA that handled all the paperwork on this look into what some of these people were charging. And some of the charges were up to 350 basis points. It's 3.5% of the amount of their investment just going for fees. We were able to bring those fees down somewhere in the range of 50 basis points, 1/2%. So we're estimating that every year employees are paying about $250,000 over 700 people too much in fees compared to what we're going to go to from where we are now to what we're going to go to. Plus, that's going to include some very good education and a quality array of investments that have been vetted. And we're going to have a watchdog. Within that cost, those 50 basis points, we're going to have a watchdog that's going to overlook as to what's being sold, so that we don't get some vendor that's really good the first year and then comes in and tries to sneak in all kind of expensive stuff on the side. We have somebody watching them that is paid separately, that is not connected, and has fiduciary responsibility to the school board and to its employees to make sure that what's being sold is performing as it should, and that the fees are reasonable and they're not just trying to make more money per se. So we have it's a best practices to have a watchdog and to have the investments separated so that you have a good checks and balances on each other. And quarterly, we'll see a report from, if this is approved, from Cornerstone Investments, who has an office here in Lafayette, who will monitor everything that's sold, monitor what is sold, and make sure that we're getting the best bang for our buck for our employees. So you're going to see some employees that are going to get substantially more in their retirements because they're paying substantially less fees because we went out and shopped it for them. So it's like buying investments from 7-Eleven or buying investments from Costco. We're getting institutional wholesale pricing rather than high-end retail pricing. Plus, we get a lot better education.
Mr. Zentini, all right. I understand there's two parts to this. I'm understanding that one part is, and I agree with 100%, and that is if the taxpayers of this parish or the school board, which is furnished by the, financed by the taxpayers, if we have a responsibility, a fiduciary responsibility, then I don't think the taxpayers of Lafayette should be put on the hook for a bad investment. So I agree with that part, 100%. But if employee wants to pay 3% or 5% or 10% fee for what they buy, I don't think that's our business. I mean, I don't think that we're their keepers. I mean, if you want to make a bad investment, that's your business. But you go do it like you said. You do it with your own check and buy what you want to buy and pay that vendor his percentage. But I do not want to be responsible. I don't want the taxpayer to be responsible, and that's kind of the way I see it.
Well, right now the taxpayer is responsible, and I'll also again remind you that out of the 4,200 potential participants, there's 700 people that participate. So that's 3,500 people that don't participate. Now, there's several reasons. Some of them don't care about their retirement. Some of them have no idea what they should be doing. Some of them don't have an opportunity. Again, they don't want to see salesmen. This would be a dedicated process. First of all, we would now not have that risk that you're talking about. And the risk is not on the fees for the taxpayer. The risk is if we get sued. Okay? And we get sued a lot around here. So we're familiar with that. What happens is you take and you lower these fees. That's a plus, not just for the 700 people in the plan, but you look at Ascension Parish, East Baton Rouge, the Diocese of Lafayette, and the list goes on, who have transitioned to a single vendor. One of the things you saw early and often was participation rates rose. This is a way to give an opportunity to those people who are not in the plan because they don't want to pay those high fees, because there's no other option. Because they don't want to pay those high fees, now can get in the plan. They still have they have the same investment options as far as mutual funds, etc. They're just not in the expensive product models. So yeah, if somebody's paying 3% and likes it, I'm okay with that. But I'm also okay with somebody who would like another option, and I'm also okay with getting the risk off of our back.
Yes, sir, Mr. Centeni.
It's literally the last time I yield the floor to you because it was exactly what I was going to say. That we should not be babysitting anyone because maybe they're getting something for their 3.5% that they really value. So that being said, can one of you gentlemen give some color to what the risk is? Okay, so like I get we've gone from 0% responsible to 100% responsible. What does that mean, 100% responsible? I mean, we have to pay back somebody that loses all their money when they invest in gold and it goes in the tank?
Yes, sir. My name is Lucius McGee. I'm with Argent Financial Group. One of the services that we've already serving the school board with is we're the paying agent and registrar on the school board's bond issues, and we have a long history with the administration and helping with that area. And we were asked by the administration to come look at this. This is something that's happening with the Department of Labor, is starting to look at the expenses that are paid by the participants. Now, just a real quick primer, a 403B is a defined contribution plan, and that's different from a defined benefit plan. Teachers' retirement, school employees is a defined benefit plan that you guys know how much that costs. The defined contribution plan of 403B is that teacher or that school employee elects themselves to put the money into the plan. So once it starts going through your payroll system, you expose yourself to risk. That is it prudent from a fee standpoint? Is it prudent from an investment selection standpoint? And the government, the federal government, is getting involved in that. So right now you're fragmented with the way that service is being offered to the employees. What the administration is doing now is trying to get their arms around that so that they can manage that, and as Jeremy just said, wants to offload some of that risk to the provider and also to the investment advisor, and that's why we went through the RFP process to select those people. Now, what's before you is still contingent upon making sure that that risk is mitigated, and that risk is mostly, I mean, everybody can sue over pretty much anything, but it is the service, the investment selection that you get, as well as the expenses that you pay for that. So that's what's being mitigated here.
All right, are there any more questions or comments? All right. I did forget. Madam Secretary, I'll call for the vote. Oh, I had a call for the public earlier, Ms. Pat, but go ahead. That's when we're supposed to do it, and that's our policy.
I'm Pat Sonia, and Madam Chairman, the only question I have is that if you have a 403B and you're in the system right now and you've invested in that, and then we decide that we're only going to go with this one company for you to invest with, and you cannot put money into that account going through the school board anymore. So you either pull it out, or you invest, you invest in another account and you leave your account alone. And the interest that you're going to earn from that, if this account is there and you can't add to it, the interest is going to kind of stabilize and you won't be able to earn any more. But if you have to pull it out, right now is not the time to pull any money out of any investment that you have. Because if you have mutual funds in that, right now it's down. And the good thing is to leave it in later on so you can pull it out. So you're going to put some people in jeopardy not knowing whether they need to pull it out, or they'll make less money if they pull it out because there's a certain fee if you pull it out early. They have all these rules and I don't know all of them. But someone told me that when the account went down and he had a 403B, he said when it went down to, he had 30,000 and went down to like 15. He decided he was going to pull his money out because he didn't want it to go down anymore, which was foolish. He should have left it in because it eventually comes back up. But, people have to learn about all this, and I'm not sure that teachers are ready to do all of this learning right now. They just thought they were safe where they are. And the question is, can we choose maybe 2 or 3 companies that have the majority of our investments right now and see if we can offer that to the teachers instead of just one? Because when you offer one, it looks like a monopoly, and it's not going to rest well with them. But since they've invested, I think there's one company, they have 400 people invested in them. They're happy with that. Let them stay with that. Look at some others that are good investments, but don't single it down to one, because it's like you're being, the person that's in charge of it. And teachers need to make some, decisions, and in deducting it from the school board payroll tax. There was some law in Louisiana passed that let that happen, and that's why we started letting them come into the schools to do that. It was passed by the legislature, and I haven't looked that up. But, I've been in here long enough that it's gone, the wagons have circled more than once. And we have to realize that sometimes our business department will need to do extra work reporting to the federal government on checking on things, because, you're responsible for so much. But open it up to just more than one company, not leave it with just one. And make sure the teachers understand that if they switch, they may lose some money. And that's a hard thing to do, and especially since teachers do not make that much money. And it's the ones that invested years ago, finally they're making a good salary, but it didn't start off like that.
Yes, sir. Mr. Hidalgo?
Board members, I want... Yeah.
Mr. Hidalgo.
Oh, thank you.
Can't let it go, huh?
Couple of things I'd like to clarify. Number one, if they stay in their current investment, they may lose money. When you sell an investment, you only lose money if you sell it and then put it in your sock or put it in a bank account that's making no interest. But if you're transferring it to the same investment option that they're in now, you're not losing money. You're selling it for $5, then you go buy it for $5. It's a wash. Let me also say that it's not one investment option. It's one company with every mutual fund option on the market that our advisor, if chosen, is going to narrow down to something manageable. They are going to have 10 times more options with this plan than they have today. I'm going to make that clear. So we are not going to one investment option. We're just going to one company. We're hiring a company to manage this process, essentially, as opposed to having 9 different companies with 9 different processes. So when an employee calls Matt's office to get a loan, instead of calling their advisor, whom they don't know, by the way, because they change out every couple of years, they're calling Matt. Well, Matt doesn't know what paperwork. Well, guess what? Matt, he's not going to have to do it anymore, but he's going to know what paperwork, because it's going to be one. So we're hiring a company to manage this. This is not one investment option. I want to make that clear.
Mr. Leslie?
The only thing I kind of wanted to inject, Ms. Pat, the company I work for, in what I'm going to call the civilian world, we have one company we invest with. There's not many but we have all the options available to us. And any employee can stay where they're at now. They don't have to move. They can roll it over. Just kind of wanted to let you know that. I mean, that's what we have with the company I work with. We have one company we invest with, but we have many options. We have availability, all the funds available to anyone else.
And sir, I assume that just like with 401ks, there are opportunities to roll over from one 403b advisor to the other without penalty.
It all depends on the investments that they have made in there. That's one of the things, you know, as the president said, he might want to invest in gold. Okay, right now, one of the things that's going to happen is he wanted to invest in gold. He can continue to invest in gold because the investment advisor is going to pick the best vehicle for that to happen. So, for example, in today's world, that investment is that participant's being charged 1% for that mutual fund that is invested in gold. When we're finished, it'll be 50 basis points. So they still get probably the same fund, just a different class of fund. It's just gets more money into the participant's pocket. Now on the rollover, that is going to be an option for each participant. One of the negotiations that we're having right now is the new provider working out a plan so that they could possibly pay the transfer fee, if any, to the participant should they move over. So we are not, the objective is not to injure the participant in any way by this transition.
And there will be an education process. We have education experts that will sit with each one of those 700 teachers that are currently invested, because some of that money they may not want to roll over. If they're surrender charged, because not only do they have 300 basis points, a 3% charge, if they turn the money over and it's not 10 years or 5 years or whatever it is, they pay another charge. Well, maybe that money should stay in the old fund until those charges go away. And that's going to be individually done with each teacher one by one, as long as they need, as much investment time as they need, and they'll make the choice to roll over or not roll over. And that's going to be based on financial mathematics. And basically, the advisor's not going to be making recommendations, but doing the math of saying, well, it probably makes sense for you to roll over this old money where you don't have the surrender charge because your fees are going to go down from 3% to 0.5%. But this other stuff, because it's got a 5% surrender charge, probably doesn't make sense. But next year, when this little piece comes off, we're going to roll that over. And they're already going to calendar all that out, so that teacher will be contacted every year saying, you know, your surrender charges on this piece of money has expired. Would you like to move that over? And they're going to personally monitor everybody's account.
Any additional questions or comments from the board? All right, Madam Secretary, I'll call for the vote.
Seven for, one against.
Okay, motion carries. 7.6 was pulled. Dr. Chasson, self-funded construction fund budget revision for Como restroom project.
Yes, sir. I wanted to get an understanding of why the cost tripled.
Good evening, members of the board. Kyle Bordelon, Director of Planning and Facilities. As was alluded to earlier by Dr. Aguilar, when we put these budgets together, we base our budgeting on past projects. Oftentimes, we hit the number really well, and at the end of the project, we're able to return some money back to the administrative contingency line item. Sometimes we miss the budget. Recently, we renovated most of the restrooms at Lafayette High School and that was a project that was around $100,000 to $120,000. At Como High, we had budgeted somewhere around the same amount of money. However, when the architect started digging into the details at the school itself, he found that practically every bathroom had to be brought up to handicap standards, because back when that school was built, in the late 60s, early 70s, handicap accessibility was not an issue. Also had to verify that enough toilet fixtures would be available for the student population that's there. So the scope of the work, as they dug into more details, the scope of the work and the cost crept upward. So where we're at this time is what is presented in the agenda item, and I hope I've answered your question.
I have a question. If nobody else does it, follow up. I was under the impression that you're referring to the American with Disabilities Act, I assume, when you said they upgraded the restroom facilities.
Yes, sir.
I was under the impression that the scope or the percentage of the renovation project was what determined when you had to cross that line to be affected by the American with Disabilities Act. It's not an amount. I mean, for instance, if I redo a cloakroom in a school, they're not going to make me do the cloakroom with the American with Disabilities Act because it's too small of a project. But if I do a restroom, they're going to make me do it even though it's $100,000?
If we are renovating all the restrooms, which is the intent of the project, to renovate all of the restrooms, we'll have to bring them all up to handicap accessibility standards. And since we are a public facility, we have to have accessible restrooms. Yes, sir.
So it doesn't matter how much it costs or how little we do. If we renovate it, we have to do it with American, to come up to American
Well,
with disabilities.
if you're just doing a cloakroom, there may be an accessible restroom that's nearby. So you may not have to bring that cloakroom up to accessible standards if there is a nearby accessible facility. But in our case at Como High, we need to bring up all those restrooms to accessible standards.
I think Dr. Chaplin has a question.
So you said Como was built before Lafayette High?
It was built in the late 60s, I believe, 66.
And when was Lafayette High built?
52 was the original building.
They just finished renovating the Lafayette High restrooms. So I was questioning Kyle about the intent of where we're headed. So Como High is next in line. It's reasonable to assume we'd be moving to another school, could be Acadiana High School, opened in 1969, just part of the refurbishing of those bathrooms.
Right. I understand that, but with the explanation of, well, Como was built before Lafayette High, and it's not, then... So Lafayette High was handicap accessible, so that's why it was the base fee of just updating the bathrooms, renovating them for $120, and Como wasn't handicap accessible?
I'm not sure I understand your question.
Based upon one being built before the other, that determined whether or not they were handicap accessible, the bathrooms?
Well, the Americans with Disability Act was enacted in the 1980s. So anything built prior to that was not accessible by persons in wheelchairs. Over the years, the school system has done our best to make restrooms accessible. Sometimes we've had to remove one toilet that was adjacent to another in order to make a larger stall for a wheelchair to get in. So we've tried to make some accommodations along the way, but also to add to this, these restrooms have only been painted basically since the school was constructed. So in the process of renovating these restrooms, we're trying to install some surfaces that will be more easily cleanable, less porous, which makes cleanup and maintenance a lot easier in the long run.
Okay, but Kyle, help me understand something. Handicap accessibility is the issue that is causing this number to triple. Is that correct or not?
Not entirely.
Not
That's
entirely.
part of it, but the number of restrooms and the condition of the restrooms is another factor in that.
Okay, so we estimated 120?
Yes, we estimated 120 or 150. I forget the exact number.
So what staff members went in there and determined that, from our expertise opinion, this project is gonna cost 120, then somebody else comes in there and says it's gonna cost 360,000?
I put that estimate in there in the budgeting process because that was based on previous projects. However, when the architect gets in there and starts counting the number of toilets and the work that needs to be done, he puts together an estimate. I've got a more detailed estimate back in my office where they went item by item. What you see in the agenda item is basically lists of restroom by restroom, but I've got a detailed estimate that they put together of item by item, toilet by toilet, lavatory by lavatory, and that's what it came out to be.
Okay. Did you bring that with you?
No, sir, it's back at my office. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I think maybe, do we have a motion on the floor? We ought to have a motion to continue the discussion. You want to make a motion?
Yeah, I mean, we got to continue, we got to have it to continue discussion, so I'll move approval.
Okay. And a second, okay. Mr. Santini?
Not really knowing how these things work, I just have a question about what is involved in general, I guess I assume GC stands for general contractor?
General conditions, that's insurance, bonding, supervision that the contractor has to carry while he's performing the project.
So that doesn't come at his cost?
Yes, it is, but it's a factor that has to be included in the price of the work. The costs that were listed were basically the architect's estimated raw cost of the work to be done.
I'm not even concerned about not that I'm not concerned about the 284, but that's not what I'm questioning right now. Like, let's say that's what it costs. GC stands for general contractor?
I'm sorry, yes, it does stand for general contractors overhead and profit, and general contractors general conditions.
General conditions means bonding, insurance.
Yes, sir.
What comes under overhead then?
Well, it's profit and overhead is what the term is. That's the generally accepted term of profit and overhead.
All right. And then, so we're carrying his bonding and insurance for him while he performs the project.
Well, he charges us because that's part of the project. That's part of our requirements, that he has to have 100% performance and payment bond, and he has to be covered by a minimum $1 million of liability insurance.
Okay. And then the design fee for the architect, as we heard before, the 7% was what they were usually, something like that. I don't know. I'm recalling the conversation we had a few minutes ago. This one seems to be 10%. And then on top of that, it appears that he is charging us 10% on the general contractor profit as well. Is that customary?
Well, in trying to develop a total project cost to present to the board, I include the design fee, which is the 10.02%. That is a calculation that's based on the Department of Planning and the Department of, I just went blank.
I'm more concerned about...
It's a state fee formula, and it's a sliding scale.
Okay.
The lower the project, the more the percentage is. The larger the project, the smaller the percentage is.
That seems reasonable. But is it usually applied on the profit that, like, it seems to me that all these percentages, it's just me not knowing how all this works, but it seems to me it should be applied to the 284.
The
not to the
Mr.
331.
Santini, if I might.
Yes? I mean,
the bidder is going to, this architect provided us this is Architect Southwest providing us an estimate. When we get our bids, we're going to likely get a fixed price from a contractor. So the architect's, as far as I understand it, the architect's fee is on the total project cost, which would include the contractor's profit.
Yes, that's correct. When the
So
contractor,
we'll get a fixed price. Let's just say that these estimates are exactly right. We'll get a fixed price bid from, say, the Lemoyne Company, because that's at the top of my head, for $331,951, and that'll be the price to do this work. And then he'll get the 10.02. The design fee will be 10.02% of that fixed price from the contractor's fee.
I had it backwards in my head that the architect was going to be. Never mind. I get it. Thank you for clearing that up for me.
okay.
One quick comment. I think this goes along with the theme of today, is that we can probably do better with our estimating processes, and probably just need to look at how we're developing our estimates before we start budgeting, so that we don't get into these discussions. Because once you put it on paper, and then once you put it in paper, or in black and white, that's it. That's the number, right? And then once you put it on the internet or on TV, then that's certainly the number. And I think it's best if we just have more accurate cost estimates from the beginning.
Any other discussions or questions? I'm sorry. If not, Madam Secretary, we'll call for the vote.
Seven for, one against.
Okay, motion carries. Now we'll move on to 7.7, which is self-funded construction fund budget revision to add Northside High School gymnasium's air conditioning. And I would accept a motion.
A motion to approve.
Okay.
I'll second.
And second by Dr. Chasson makes the motion, Mr. Knezik second the motion. Dr. Chasson, you are asked to pull it.
Mr. Bordelon, my question to you is, when will this project be completed in your guesstimation?
Approximately January.
January, okay.
The new chillers were delivered earlier this week, and the contractor's in the process of installing those, connecting those. They did a lot of work during the summer to hang ductwork in the gymnasiums, but they're also waiting on the air handlers themselves that will actually move and push the air and cool it and heat it.
Okay. The reason why I ask you that question is because I took the time to ask you that question about a month ago. And as opposed to either knowing the answer or eventually finding out the answer, what you did was you took the time to email me at a later point, and you CC'd the superintendent in on it. And in that email, which I just asked, do you have any idea? I was at the gym helping the players, training them, going through workouts with them. I asked Coach if he had any idea. Me starting the conversation, he didn't know. I said, well, Coach, I have a school board meeting later tonight. I'll find out. Kyle probably knows. And I got CC'd in on with the superintendent, and it's in your email said that in follow-up to my question about the Northside High gym, here's the summary status. The principal has been in attendance at all of the project progress meetings and is kept updated on the contractor's work and schedule. So I still got no answer. Basically, you were forwarding me, you need to talk to your principal about it, when I thought you were in charge of these things. Secondly, I got one gym is being kept open, available for practices, while the interior work is being completed on the other prior to the start of school. So that's interior, prior to the start of school, will be completed. The next bullet point is exterior work is in progress and is scheduled to be completed prior to the start of school, with the grounds returned to normal by then also. So as I read this email, maybe I'm mistaken, it says interior being completed prior to the start of school, exterior being completed prior to the start of school. And you said, I hope this helps. And if I see prior to the start of school, I assume that it's prior to the start of school. Now, I know it wasn't going to be completed prior to the start of school, but you put at the end that you hope this helps, which it didn't. I didn't get an answer. So in being CC'd in on the superintendent, I get higher-ups calling the principal at Northside to speak with them, and then eventually I get the principal calling in the coaches to speak with them about speaking to the board member. Now that I inherently have a problem with. So I'll stop with that. I just wanted to address it. I thought we were done with those days of calling in folks and kind of encouraging them not to speak to board members. But let's hope that we can do better in the future. Maybe there was some miscommunication. I'm going to let that one slide. I at least wanted to address it. So January, so now at least now, an entire month later, I can go back to the coaches and say, hey, coach, I didn't have to go and ask the principal who sits in on those weekly progress meetings. They say it'll probably be completed around January. So thank you.
Any other questions or comments? If not, Madam Secretary, we'll call for the vote.
Eight for, none against.
All right, the next item that was pulled, and Mr. Angel has handed the gavel to me because he pulled this one, is a 7.8, request to advertise RFP 11-17, Como High Performing Arts Instructional Suites and Black Box Theater.
Madam President, I move that we authorize staff to advertise and accept qualifications for RFQ number 11-17, Como High Performing Arts Instructional Suites and Black Box Theater, with the addition that the superintendent articulate the scope of the project within the RFQ.
All right, we have a motion by Mr. Santani and a second by Mr. Lashley. Do we have any questions or comments from members of the public? All right, any questions or comments from members of the board? Mr. Angel.
Thank you. Yes, and Madam President, you can stop me if I'm out of line. But I have I kind of have a passion, and we are talking about what, $6 billion. I'm using round figures to build a practice room for what, so that musicians can practice or dance people can practice dancing, et cetera, et cetera. And I understand, and this is not even on the agenda, but I think we're adding 20 or 30 classrooms, maybe in Milton, to, I don't know how many millions of dollars that is. There's a school on the north side of town, Evangeline Elementary, that has more temporary buildings than brick and mortar. More temporary buildings than brick and mortar. These students sometimes have to get their clothes dried when they go from one class to another class, because the temporary buildings are out in the boondocks and there's no connecting walkway from the temporary building to the main building or to the other building that they're going to. Now, I'm talking about students that we're trying to educate, to give them the basic education curriculum. We used to say reading and writing and arithmetic, but the basic core curriculum these kids have to walk in the rain to get to. On this hand, and on this hand, we're talking about spending millions and millions of dollars for a person to practice his cello or violin or oud or whatever instrument it is. And I would like to look more, a whole lot more, at some of the spaces that Mr. Craig mentioned at Como. Since we're losing, what, 700 or 900 students, I guess we'll rezone some in, but there would be beaucoup space at a brick and mortar place, a real building, for these students to practice their instruments. And maybe we should look at spending some money at getting rid of some of those temporary buildings at Evangeline School. I mean, more temporary buildings than permanent buildings, and it's tough. And I just think that I think those kids deserve a piece of the pie too. I'm getting off my box.
All right, Mr. Santani.
And I'll take your place. It's exceptionally unfortunate that that situation plays out across the parish in more than just one place. Evangeline Elementary, without a doubt, has more temporary classrooms than regular classrooms. Broadmoor Elementary School, which helpfully the superintendent provided us with head counts for our information item on appeal slots. Broadmoor Elementary School falls into the same category. They have 598 students. Evangeline Elementary has 554. LJ Alamo falls into the same category. They have 1,098 students for a middle school. They have more temporary classrooms than regular classrooms. LJ Alamo has washers and dryers too. I've seen it in action. They go and change into PE uniforms. They go to math class. They come back. They change into their uniform. It's unfortunate for us and for the students of this parish that that situation exists. Not only that it exists, but it exists in multiple places. I will say that this instructional space at Como, not a practice room, but classroom space, which was the conversation that I think was the center of the discussion at not only the finance but the facilities committee. It's, well, can we build an auditorium or should we build classrooms first? And this is what it is. It's classroom space. It's instructional space. Dr. Robank, correct me if I'm wrong, the strings currently, they teach their strings class, which is a part of their daily 7-period schedule. Their strings class in a portable classroom at Lafayette High. The piano room at Lafayette High is a converted conference room. These are actual instructional spaces for, frankly, the most popular school of choice we have in this parish. There are over 800 children at J. Wallace James who then go to LJ Alamo, who, as I mentioned, have 1,098 students, only about 250 of which are actually zoned for Alamo. So 800 in elementary school, another 750 in middle school, and as we all learned in June, there's about 450 in high school. And so this is an exceptionally popular program. There's a lot of demand. These are instructional spaces that are a vast, vast improvement over what they've been successful with to this point. And so while I wholeheartedly agree with you that the children at Evangeline, at Broadmoor, at LJ Alamo, anywhere in this parish that children go to school in portable buildings deserve better, there's a lot of programs deserve better than what we're able to provide. And we got to start somewhere. And I hope everybody can support this project that we're trying to move forward with to benefit one of the most popular programs we have in this parish. Thank you, ma'am.
Mr. Hidalgo.
Stones Yell, I want to start off by saying that you have made a damn good point, and you have a really good argument for that point. I just want to say that we have a limited amount, although it has grown because of our interest rate and such. We do have a limited amount of bonding capacity, and I feel so strongly, and I hope that my fellow board members at least somewhat agree that with this bonding capacity, it's really important that we use it to increase capacity in the district as opposed to just replacing. And I'll tell you why, because it's not just at Evangeline, although I would agree it is the worst as it relates to having more Butler buildings than permanent classrooms. The same thing similar holds true across the parish. It holds true at Milton, it holds true at Alamo, and the list goes on. And so if we take the limited bonding capacity and try to start replacing Butler buildings, you pick the spot. It could be Evangeline. And maybe 5 more spots. That still leaves 30 other spots not taken care of. Then it becomes, well, why did your 5? It's either one school got it or 5 schools got it and others didn't. A lot of money is going in a certain area, and it's because of the growth. I know I've said that ad nauseum. I mean, I just hope that we could, 2 things. Number one, focus on sending that capacity to increase, sending our bonding capacity to increase literal capacity, and then secondly, focusing on what we're going to do as a board to increase our revenues to address not just Evangeline, but Evangeline and every other school that has Butler buildings. But good point, and I'm sorry that that is the case at Evangeline.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Madam Secretary, I'll call for the vote.
Seven for, one against.
All right, the last item on the agenda is 7.9, selection of record keeper for the 403B program.
Madam President, I move approval.
All right, we have a motion by Mr. Hidalgo and a second by Mr. Lashley. Do we have any questions or comments from members of the public? All right, any questions or comments from the board?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Angel.
And I'm going to pick on Jeremy again as the expert. And Jeremy and I had a discussion. I just want to make sure that the process of the selection of the record keeper, my concern is not the record keeper. My concern is the process for the selection of the record keeper was completely made at public meetings and was completely transparent. And I'd like for you to comment.
Yes, sir. Well, the record keeper, the decision, I'm sorry, I forgot how you put it, but the decision regarding this record keeper has not been made. That's what we're doing tonight. The process that was followed was the process that's followed on architects, engineers, contractors, the list goes on and on. There's an RFP that goes out. The companies that respond to that RFP get an opportunity to be vetted. Now, I'll tell you, the last time we actually did through the insurance advisors, we did have them come here and present to us, the board. But that was, we specifically put that in the motion. But every other time that it hasn't been specifically mandated that they come before us, because that's, as we all agreed in the past, not what we do. Otherwise, we'd be here for 12 hours every week. Matt and Mona and the superintendent and Mr. Guidry and the Argent, the firm we hired, I also sat in on the meetings because I was part of requesting all of this from back in June. Sat down and Argent interviewed, if you will, each one of the participants. And then when all the participants left and went home, the conversation was had in the room, just like it's done for architects, engineers, etc., what's going to be recommended. At this point in time, it's up for approval. So the RFP process was not a public meeting. It really never is. If we want to change that process, well, certainly, have that discussion, but that the process is, we follow the process as has always been followed, except when it was mandated that it come before the board. That was a long answer. It could have been short.
Okay, any other questions or comments from the board? All right, then, Madam Secretary, I'll call for the vote.
That's it. Mine says the same thing. Yeah. We'll do a voice vote, Madam Secretary. That's the last voting item anyway, I think.
Right.
Well, I'll let her start what she wants.
District 2,
No.
District 3,
Yes.
District 4,
Yes.
District 5,
Yes.
District 6,
Yes.
District 7, District 8,
Yes.
District 9.
Okay, motion carries. Before we adjourn, I want to recognize Dr. Shuffle. You had asked me.
8, 4, 1 against.
You want to go there?
Well, mine, I think, is related to the agenda. I just want to ask Dr. Aguilar to make sure that when we have, for our second meeting of the month, I thought we were going to only have time-sensitive action items. We voted on 10 items tonight. Maybe all of them were time-sensitive, but I would argue that some of these could have waited till the first board meeting of the next month. And I'd just like to remind staff to make sure that we reserve the second board meeting for time-sensitive action items.
Yes, sir. You are correct that we felt like many of these were time-sensitive, and I apologize for that.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, board, for indulging me. I at least wanted to say a few words about Ms. Teresa Davis. Ms. Davis was my principal at Vermilion Elementary. And when I say Ms. Davis loved us with all of her heart, like I can mention a million names: Daniel Davis, Shatero Wiltz, Curtin Curley Dean, kids that were born and raised in this area, that she made sure we got a good education. She made sure we had great teachers, Miss Carey, Miss Millette, Miss Louviere, Miss Francis, Miss DeBose. We eventually got Dorothy Scott as our principal. And when I say Miss Davis thoroughly loved me, loved every kid that came through there, she just took care of us all the way up until we were grown. She took the time to call me. I mean, we're all family pretty much. So you go to her house, it's like going to your house. And she just took the time she would call me. Hey, look, you running? Yes, ma'am. Well, listen, you don't have to worry about coming knock. Just come put the signs in the yard. But after you put the signs in the yard, make sure you come knock and come talk to me. Yes, ma'am. And that young lady that came and spoke for the leader in me, same lineage, same family, grandkids, great-grandkids. I mean, a long lineage of amazing women that will do amazing things. And I just wanted to say, I hope her son Gershom is watching, my brother's watching, Tony, my mom, that when I say we thoroughly love Ms. Davis, there are no words to really explain it. And then as well, I just wanted to mention that last night got a text message. That text message was real simple. It said, Honey died. And Honey is my grandmother. And rest in peace, Mary Chasson. She took care of us. She loved us. She made sure my dad was who he was. She made sure I am who I hope to be. So just wanted to mention that. Thank you, guys. I appreciate it.
Meeting is adjourned.